Scarpetta premiered recently on Prime Video, and today we're talking with Bryan Parker from the Formosa Sound team who worked on this production. Thank you so much for being here, Bryan.
Thanks very much for having me.
So with Scarpetta recently releasing, how does it feel to finally have this project shared with the world?
I'm really happy that it's out and people can sort of start to dig into these characters the way that we have for the last several months. Um, the two timeline thing was really fun from a sound perspective, and there's big sections of this show where the family dynamic plays out in a way that I really like. I think the balance between like the family drama and then the mystery unraveling is well done. And I feel like our department did a good job contributing to a really strong story.
It's a really unique show. It was one of the ones that I love a good murder mystery, I should say. And to kind of have it told with the two timelines, I think was so unique. But when you kind of start with a show like this, how would you define that like sonic identity of Scarpetta early in the production?
I read some scripts early on, but I didn't really sink into what I felt like the show wanted sound wise until I saw an early cut and I saw
Okay.
how gritty the visual style was.
Okay.
I was reminded a lot of Fincher's Seven, and there's a lot of dirt. Like there's a lot of grit
Yeah.
in the word grit
Like,
gets used in a different sense a lot of time. Let me explain what I mean. Um, so the word grit gets used in like a noir kind of like angry characters kind of a way. What I'm talking about is actually like inside the visual field. It's very messy in some places on the
sure.
show, especially the cold open of the season is just very, dead body, pretty filthy
Kick,
on
yeah,
the
it kicks
side
right
of
off.
some train tracks, right? And there's a messiness to Kay Scarpetta's world, and she's trying to put some order to it. And for that reason, I pursued a saturated, distorted, textural sound design theme for the series. For season one, anyway. Who knows? Season two could be something different. I don't know. We'll see. Because one of the timelines is in 1998, we use some technology from back then to lend some authenticity to those scenes and to draw a difference between the past timeline and the current timeline. And a big part of the sound design, like the recurring sound design elements and textural
Sure.
elements, come from tape saturation, from real analog tape saturation. So I brought out my actual analog tape echoes and fed the other theme elements into those tape echoes and then made them self-oscillate. So the other theme elements are the train, the cameras, train brakes, and the different cameras from the two different timelines. And we made these like rhythmic, distorted loops, and that's in the reenactment sequences in episode 2 and in episode 6. A lot of the underlying moody could be perceived as kind of drony, not quite
Sure.
musical elements, but almost there. That's what those are made out of. Different variations on those things. So there's some train brake squeaking, and also some bowed cymbal that is tuned to the real recordings of the train brakes to give those trains a little more. There's some
Sure.
broken cymbal bow things that I did. Those made these building kind of churning textural elements that right off the jump, like right off the beginning of the cold open in episode 1, draw us in.
So with the story kind of being told in those two timelines, did you know like right off the bat that you wanted a distinct like sound for each one, or did that come as you were kind of working on the process?
I knew from the script level that we wanted to, that I wanted to pitch to the showrunner,
Sure.
that these two timelines should have distinct identities, and Liz was on board with that, absolutely. And I think that their picture editors came to the same conclusion along the way that I did, that they really needed to feel different, and there's definitely detailed work to do in there, but the truth of the matter is that 1998 was a noisier world than now. Everything's quieter now.
Sure.
Like So the office environment in the medical examiner's office, and cars and cameras and everything, just everything. The trend of most engineering of the physical devices that we interact with, yeah, our whole lives, the trend is for those things to make less and less sound. Um,
And it's
which
cool
I
to be
guess
able
is
to play with that a little bit, to be able to have such a distinct, like you said, yeah, you don't always think about that necessarily. Well, I guess like me, like I don't think about that necessarily. Like things sound softer now, different, and that would have a distinct sound in the '90s compared to now.
Oh, for sure. The Office of the County Medical Examiner is full of, if you listen to the background sounds, like what young Kay Scarpetta's world has like dot matrix printers in the background because it's sort of like a institutional, old, reliable tech kind of thing. Even 98, that style of printer was on its way out in homes, and I think in most business environments, dot matrix printers are on the way out. But in any sort of like a broader institutional kind of environment, they were all over the place. DMV had that, had that sort
Yeah,
of dot matrix kind of feel, which is obviously way louder than your inkjet printer at home, and also way louder than a laser printer. That would get used now. So your most perceptive viewers are gonna hear the difference right away. That young Kay Scarpetta's world has like noisier HVAC,
yeah.
noisier printers, noisier cameras, noisier everything in the background of those scenes, even when it's not the focus. And then, of course, when it is the focus, a film camera sounds very different than a digital SLR. So I had my friend Matt Glass come over with a couple of his cameras, and I had a couple digital cameras, and we did a whole full recording workup. I think I actually recorded that at 192 kilohertz on my recorder, the fancy microphones.
Sure.
And so we did a full workup of a few different cameras. And so, young Kay Scarpetta, her camera usually has, I think there's maybe one or two that have a manual advance, but her main camera that she uses is a film camera with an advanced motor. So it has that, in addition to the sklunk of the shutter, it has that zwirp.
All those different pieces you have to think about.
Yeah. And so like a modern digital SLR doesn't have that, right?
Right.
That thing. And this is something that trips up a lot of people who haven't used each of them or noticed the difference between them in the past. Some folks have definitely cut in the classic camera sound
For
when
sure.
it's clearly a digital SLR that shouldn't make a there's no motor to wind the film. There's no film. Anyway,
Right. Absolutely.
so we did a workup of each of those kinds of cameras, and made sure to cross our T's and dot our I's about that. I will admit to you and your listeners that we took a little bit of liberty with the sound of the charging flash, just because that's such a leading element. We used it
Sure.
creatively in a couple of times. We took the liberty of using that high pitched rising whine of the sound of a
Yes.
flash charging up as a bridge element to get to some other things or for dramatic effect. But it's mostly very realistic. But we took some liberties with that particular element.
So when you kind of approach like the sound design for like the forensic scenes or the autopsy scene, did you have to like consult like a real forensic expert to kind of build what those sounds are like, or like how did that come to be to find all those pieces to like make that ambient noise that's in the back of her, her world?
We did not consult with any forensic experts on this show. We just wanted to give a sense of the different rooms in the medical examiner's office broadly. So there's the cold room, and there's the autopsy room. I think that there's a remark in episode 2 or 3 where Maggie comes in and sees, I think it's 2. Maggie comes in and sees cutting in the cold room. Anyway, we just tried to respect the different spaces
Sure.
inside the office. There's also the lab where there's like some centrifuges and where they're doing they're not dusting, where they're what's the term? Where they're using the Gorilla Glue to make the
Oh,
fingerprint.
like the impressions?
Yeah, there's a verb I'm forgetting in there somewhere. Anyway, that's another space inside the broader office. For the actual autopsy itself, we didn't consult anybody. We just went nuts. Um, we
Like we're doing it all.
when she's actually cutting, like, when she's like doing the Y cut in each of the bodies,
Yeah.
there's the split screen montage where
Sure.
young Kay and modern Kay are both cutting. They're both doing an autopsy.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and we played it all music only until she actually takes the bolt cutters and cuts the sternum all at once, and then we just went nuts.
That's awesome.
And try to make that really jarring. Like there's a sense that she's really good at what she does. There's classical music playing. It's like an elegant thing. She's prepping the body. She's very professional. And then chunk, the reality of it is she's cutting into a body to figure out what happened to this poor woman, right?
Sure.
So we took the visceralness of that pretty far.
Which I feel like for a show like this, you almost need that because there is you almost need to experience as an audience that visceral reaction to what's happening. Like it is jarring and it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I like the juxtaposition there that like here's a woman who's really good at her job. Oh God, what's her job? Oh God, that's kind of hopefully the feeling that we got out of that scene sound wise.
Are there moments that you feel like where the sound design really led the storytelling rather than just maybe support it?
I think that the reenactment scenes, do you know what I mean? The two scenes where Kay and Marino are together talking through their hypothesis of what the killer did or how he got in or whatever, that whole thing. Those two scenes are wonderful. I love them. I love what our department contributed to those scenes. But it is just a strong supporting element. But I will say that the 911, I mean, spoilers for your listeners, but the 911 office, the dispatcher's office,
sure,
scene where we're running tape, where Kay's on the reel to reel going through archives of tape,
sure,
listening back to past calls, and we've got the physical ka-chunk of the buttons and the wind up of the motors, and then the voices on the tape going by kind of quickly and then slowing down and then winding back up to say like 911, what's your emergency? What? That whole thing. I think that sound is out front of telling that whole story the whole way through, and I'm really, really proud of that. Those button sounds are my Otari 1/2-inch 4-track. The motor sounds are from that like nice beefy transport. That the sound of those voices is run through my Nagro. We hit the tape really, really hard, and got that tape saturation. We put like a phone futz sort of thing on it, and then slam the tape really hard on my old 70s Nagro recorder to get like real tape saturation on those. And I'm really proud of that sequence. I think it's obviously a primary storyteller as she's putting the pieces together. Like, when I review these archive, here comes your spoiler, folks. The same dispatcher is the voice on all of these calls. You start to recognize that voice over the course of some of those calls, and I think it feels really tactile, and I also think it feels really real because like I said, we use real tape, so the bouncing, the sound of the tape mechanism, like bouncing a little bit and then catching up and then going smooth. That's all real. There's no plug-in that's faking any of that. That's all like as it would. The technology that would be used in 98 for that.
As a psychologist, I love those moments too, because like that sound right there, instant, like all those different pieces to tell that bit of story is enough to just put your it sets your mind almost like on edge, as you're kind of building up to that. Like you can't have that scene, you can't have that bit of story without all those pieces coming together to make the right sound.
Yeah. And I mean, the performance in that scene and the aftermath of the tape scene after young Kay has realized what's up or has a strong suspicion, her voice goes just so shaky, she's in this environment where she realizes what's up. She doesn't know yet that he doesn't happen to be in the office yet. So she's very scared. I mean, she's like, when she calls Marino, she says, I need you to meet me you know.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing leads up to that, really, the very tense and very, very uncertain mounting
Yeah.
sort of dread, I guess. I think it all, I just love when all the departments are like aligned, like we're all pushing in the same direction. We all get the story to go the same way. And I feel like we pulled a lot of weight on that one.
With a scene such as like that one, you're mentioning all these different pieces and all these different components and the things that you're doing to bring that sound to life. Do you like, I guess, like, how is there trial and error in that of like, okay, we're gonna try this sound, maybe it doesn't work, let's try something like this? Or like, did you kind of know like in your head, like, we're gonna use like this machine to bring that alive?
On that particular one, I had a pretty good idea how I was going to do it from the jump. The only realization along the way was that the transport mechanism sound from the Nagra was a little bit too quiet. I mean,
Okay.
it's designed to be. Those are field recorder. Like those are designed. They're Swiss and they're designed to operate really quietly on set. So not a
Okay.
huge surprise there. I thought I could get a little bit more oomph out of it than I was able to for the transport itself. So that's why I went and did some extra recordings of my Otari for that reason. But that's sort of an outlier. There's usually like a lot of experimentation, like on the autopsy scene that we previously discussed. Getting some of those things right, like any kind of bone crunchy, like a
Right.
combination of textures, a combination of, I don't want to say materials because it's like a body's not really material, but it's like there's a bone element, there's a wet element, there's maybe
Right.
a skin element when you're cutting through, right? So there's
Right.
the, like a scalpel on the skin is dry at the top and then gets wetter as you go through, right? So
Oh yeah.
anytime like that, you're gonna want to build it in layers, and then the timing of those layers becomes a thing too. Does the bolt cutter cutting the sternum start off with the metal on metal of the hinge in the bolt cutters, and then the sound of the bone breaking, and then some wetness as you draw it out? Is it more useful to get some of the higher and crispy wetness before the thunk of the bone? So
Yeah.
we end up experimenting with those 5 or 6 layers, or however many it is, quite a bit. It's something that um, I do on my final pass of like the pit, for example. It involves a lot of experimentation to get this just as realistic as you can get it. Storytelling goals are very different between those two shows because in Scarpetta, it's okay to play those moments a little bit larger than life inside
Okay.
the nature of a more visually stylized drama like that. On my other show, we go for something very naturalistic all the time. So what everything that my department does, I look over from the context of making sure it's going to push into and sit into the production sound in a believable and realistic way. So nothing can sound like, oh,
Sure.
here's a great sound. That sounds nothing like it took place in this particular room. Like we can't do that
Sure.
on that other show. Scarpetta, we have much more room to go stylize and experiment with larger than life moments. And like, sure, you don't want to take it too far there either, but there's more room to try.
Right, because
That
it kind of borders on that little bit of a different world, like not as it's realistic, but there's like it's like a darker, like you said, gritty is a great word. You get to play in that field a little bit more.
Yeah, and so I mean, sometimes in Scarpetta, the thing that gets us from this scene to that scene is a really stylized camera flash.
Okay.
Sometimes it almost plays as a musical punctuation, like we lead up to, we can play a long reverb tail on a camera that gets us to the next thing, which on a more naturalistic show you just wouldn't do, you know.
Now, do you feel like there was anything like any new or experimental techniques that you used on the show to really bring the world of Scarpetta to life?
New or experimental. This is the first time I ever like put a fancy microphone like inside a camera body without the lens attached. Where's that camera?
Okay.
Where's my camera? To get the sound of the shutter, I took the lens off. I like not this microphone, but I got a microphone like way in there to get like a
Sure.
like that a
You
larger
almost
than
get like a
life, like
personal, like really close up sound effect.
yeah, really close, really intimate sound, a little larger than life. Like it's the kind of sound that we're recording that sounds like it's coming from inside your head, you know. That was the first time I'd done that, and it worked pretty well. Like there's some We got some like normal perspective ones too. Um, but that was the first time I'd ever like tried that and gone like, well, if we can get that kerchunk from a really, really close perspective, then it might be a more aggressive sound design element. So on some of those like really designy, transitiony,
Sure.
in your face things, that's what we used.
Now, when it comes to the role of sound design, do you feel like, in the era of like streaming television, kind of like Scarpetta, do you feel like it's changed how you approach it, knowing that it's going to be played across like televisions and laptops and even mobile devices, or is it pretty much the same approach?
No, Brian, it's really challenging these days, honestly, because everything sounds different on speakers versus headphones, man. And
Sure.
so many people are watching on devices and using AirPods or whatever. Like, you get away with a lot less. Yeah.
Sure.
So,
It's right there.
if the production sound, is difficult, or is it difficult environment, or a difficult shoot there or whatever, and the production sound is a little compromised. We're illusionists, not actual magicians. So a lot of the stuff
Sure.
everything you're going to do to reduce noise, a lot of different, there's a whole category of plugins
Sure.
now that are noise reduction plugins. They all work in different ways, some of them better than others, but all of them, when pushed too far, are going to have some artifacts
Okay.
of some kind. And so there's always a trade-off with a somewhat compromised recording of like how much you're going to reduce the noise, how much you're going to affect the sound of the dialogue itself, the tone of dialogue itself. And I really care about the ongoing conversation about dialogue intelligibility
Sure.
in modern media. It's something I take really seriously. I used to be a dialogue editor before I started supervising. Dialogue will always be king to me, even as much as I love my toys and my sounds and love making sounds, love sounds, designing new sounds that no one's ever heard before. I love that aspect of it too, but I'm dialogue first. And so, a lot of the things that you do to make a dialogue track presentable without too much noise for your listener, like I said, there's a trade-off in there all the time. And you get away with certain things by masking with background sound sometimes. Psychoacoustically, your brain will fill in some things. If there's, a more pleasant background sound you can sort of do some masking. But these days, that's really challenging because, it plays very different on speakers versus headphones. So all I can do is give it a shot, to give myself a headphone pass and try and listen in some different environments and keep it front of mind that, like, if we're getting a really large viewership, that a lot of those people are going to be in different environments than the one in which we mix. And so we just try and check.
I mean, that adds like an extra layer of difficultness to your job, having to see like where is it consistent over everything for people who are going to be listening to it in many different ways.
And time, it's just like how many passes can you fit in,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bryan, for being here. It's been such a pleasure talking to you about Scarpetta. And again, congratulations on the show being brought to the audiences. It seems to be getting a great reception, and season 2 is coming. So thank you for being here and chatting about it.
Thanks very much.
Scarpetta is streaming on Prime Video, so check it out now.